Welcome, everyone. We're doing a special deep dive for you today.
That's right.
We're looking at a pretty interesting and sometimes unsettling YouTube transcript. It's from Jasnowidz Krzysztof Jackowski official.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is really just to pull out the main ideas, the core insights from his recent predictions.
Yeah, unpack them a bit.
Exactly. So we'll be covering who he thinks might be the next pope.
Okay.
What might happen in the first round of the Polish presidential election.
Always complex.
And then some bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
Global geopolitics, potential conflicts, economic changes, maybe.
It's quite a range, isn't it? All from this one source.
It really is. So it's just one perspective, of course,
Yeah.
but let's dive in and see what's there.
Sounds good. The scope itself is noticeable straight away.
Yeah.
It's not just, politics or just religion.
Right. It connects spiritual leadership, national politics, global tensions.
Our job, then, is to kind of lay these out clearly for you, understand what they might imply, but always remembering this is one person's viewpoint, their interpretations.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Pope predictions. Where do we begin?
Well, the transcript suggests two strong candidates, even before the conclave starts.
Right. Candidate 1, Italian, over 60,
Ah.
highly educated. It mentions like academic titles, published works, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that profile sounds familiar, doesn't it? Someone likely well-established within the Vatican hierarchy.
Deeply entrenched, maybe.
That mention of academic work points to maybe a strong theological grounding, often valued.
Okay, but then candidate 2 is, quite different.
A real contrast, yeah.
Possibly younger, linked to an island, though it says take that island part loosely.
Could mean anything, really.
Non-Italian, and potentially holding more radical views, leaning towards Protestantism, even.
That is a significant departure. It flags the possibility of a real, shakeup.
How so?
Well, a younger non-Italian pope with perhaps more progressive ideas that could signal a move to connect with different groups, tackle modern issues differently.
But it might also cause friction, right, with more conservative parts of the church.
Definitely. And that vague island thing maybe just suggests someone from outside the traditional power centers of Catholicism.
Interesting. But then there's another twist.
Oh.
A third potential candidate. Someone who might emerge during the conclave itself.
Okay, so not one of the front runners initially.
Right. Described as from an exotic country, darker skin, maybe Mexico, Latin America, northern South America.
Ah, reflecting the church's growth in the global south.
And their focus, predicted to be on missionary work.
That makes sense. A pope from Latin America or Africa focusing on outreach evangelization that would resonate with where the church is growing fastest. It could shift priorities.
So the prediction basically boils down to it's either one of the first two strong contenders.
The Italian academic or the younger non-Italian.
Or if the cardinals are divided, maybe deadlocked.
Then this third missionary-focused candidate could be the compromise.
That seems to be the idea. Gives a sense of the internal dynamics, doesn't it? Even if it's all speculation.
It certainly implies the frontrunners aren't always guaranteed. Flexibility, unexpected outcomes. Depends on those closed-door discussions.
Okay, let's switch gears. Poland. The presidential election, first round.
Right. And the transcript notes predicting this is tough.
Why's that?
Well, suggestion, media influence.
Yeah.
It's hard to see the real trends through all that noise.
Yeah, the polls, the commentary, it can all shape opinion, can't it? Hard to know what's genuine sentiment versus, media narrative.
Exactly. But there's a specific prediction made about Braun.
Ah, yes. Expected to get a surprising result. Polls underestimating him.
Suggests he might do much better than people think.
What could that indicate?
Maybe a segment of voters the polls just aren't capturing? Or perhaps a late surge in support for some reason. Reminds you, polls are just a snapshot, not destiny.
And what about Trzaskowski?
Turnout for his voters predicted to be significant, but maybe not overwhelming.
So his base shows up, but perhaps he's not pulling in lots of new voters in round one.
That could be the implication. Solid core support, but maybe limited broader appeal at this stage. Turnout's always key, isn't it?
Definitely. Then there's this mention of a wedge for Naraki. Can we unpack that a bit? Wedge in this political context.
Yeah, it likely means his support is concentrated in a way that reinforces the existing political divide.
So it doesn't bridge the gap. It sort of solidifies the PI versus PO dynamic.
Pretty much. It makes a first-round win unlikely for anyone. and kind of guarantees that continued battle between the major camps in the next round.
Which highlights those deep divisions in Poland that we keep seeing.
Exactly.
And actually, the transcript says the first round result will mostly reflect that division, left versus right-leaning voters, rather than just being about the individual candidates themselves.
That suggests voter identity in Poland is really strongly tied to those broader camps. People vote the party line, perhaps, more than the person, at least initially.
Okay, one last point on the Polish election, a prediction about Braun after the election.
Oh, regardless of the result.
Yeah, it predicts he'll form a significant, rapidly growing far-right movement,
Wow, okay.
posing a future challenge to Confederacja, PS, PO, potentially affecting both left and right.
That would be a major shift. A powerful new movement like that could really redraw the political map in Poland.
The predicted speed of growth sounds, well, potentially volatile.
Definitely something to watch if it pans out that way.
Okay, moving now to the more global and, frankly, more worrying stuff. Geopolitical tensions, future conflicts.
Right. 3 hotspots identified.
Russia, Ukraine, obviously. Israel, Middle East, and Pakistan, India.
And the immediate thing that jumps out.
Nuclear power is involved in every single one.
Yes. Russia, Israel's assumed capability, Pakistan, India. It just automatically raises the stakes, doesn't it? Even for supposedly localized conflicts.
Hugely. But then there's this prediction of a larger global conflict, possibly starting as early as July this year, 2025.
That's alarming. And a specific trigger is mentioned.
A potential U.S. blockade of a shipping lane aimed at China.
And then Chinese ships defying it, leading to a U.S. air attack, which China then sees as an act of war.
That is a very specific and very concerning scenario. If that blockade happened, what about the immediate economic fallout beyond the military side?
Oh, it would likely be severe and immediate. Global trade, supply chains, massive disruption, prices for goods could spike everywhere. Huge instability.
Affecting everyone, not just the U.S. and China.
Absolutely. Shipping, insurance, major uncertainty, massive potential losses.
The transcript also talks about a growing global alienation from the U.S., even among allies. And it hints the U.S. might actually be seeking a pretext for a world war.
That's a very serious claim about U.S. intentions, isn't it? It reflects a certain anxiety about potential U.S. unilateralism, maybe a perceived decline in its influence.
The idea of actively looking for a war, that's a grave interpretation.
It implies a deliberate strategy, yeah.
Then there's Trump. His foreign policy, predicted to be a failure despite an explosive start.
Leading to isolation, it says. And then this really ambiguous phrase, a possible plan from within the U.S. to annihilate him politically. Or otherwise.
Or otherwise is chilling. What could that even mean realistically given his support base, according to the source's view?
Well, the source doesn't spell it out, but it suggests maybe significant internal opposition. Could be political maneuvering, maybe unforeseen events that just drastically shift things for him. Hard to say from the text.
Okay, shifting focus slightly. There's mention of a war against humanity.
Beyond just state conflicts, linked to a recent plague.
It sounds like a commentary on broader societal changes, maybe the pandemic response. What sort of shifts could that phrase be pointing to?
It's very open to interpretation, isn't it? Could be about perceived limits on freedom, technology's impact, maybe a critique of global health policies during COVID. It suggests a kind of conflict affecting basic human life, society itself.
There's also a specific critique of the media.
Ah, yes. The lack of coverage of civilian suffering, children, in war zones.
Questioning their commitment to democracy, morality, if they ignore that suffering.
It raises real questions about media priorities, doesn't it? Which stories get told and how that shapes our understanding of war's human cost.
And it goes further, saying media and politicians haven't really changed since World War II.
Implying terrible things can still happen under the guise of democracy, especially if conflict spreads in Europe.
It's a pretty pessimistic take on history repeating itself.
A cyclical view, yeah. Suggesting the fundamental dynamics of power, conflict, media, they might not change as much as we think. A cautionary note.
Okay, let's quickly cover some other points mentioned. It states, quite firmly, that Leopard didn't commit suicide.
Right. That's an assertion about a past event in Poland. Reflects a specific conviction the speaker holds.
And then a warning for you listening. Prepare for a potential financial crisis. Possibly within this year.
A concerning outlook. So, for you listening, what practical steps could someone even consider if that looked likely?
Well, general advice in these situations often includes reviewing investments, maybe diversifying, ensuring you have some accessible cash.
Maybe looking at debt management too.
Yeah.
Essential supplies, depending on how severe it might be.
Mhm.
But it's always very personal. Depends on individual circumstances.
Sure. Then, cryptocurrencies. 3 specific ones mentioned as becoming economic pillars.
Pillars, right. But not replacing the dollar, it says.
Not yet, anyway. That comes before a new international currency appears, backed by gold, possibly from China.
Now, that would be a huge shift in global finance.
Yeah.
Gold-backed currencies. Historically, they offered a certain stability, didn't they?
Right. If China introduced one, it could seriously challenge the current system, impact savings, investments, everything.
It suggests a multi-stage process. Crypto rising, maybe reflecting lost faith in current money, then a swing back towards something tangible like gold, led by a new power player.
And we see those recurring themes again, a future plague, this war against humanity idea,
Yeah.
reinforcing those broader anxieties.
Yeah, it paints a picture of ongoing global challenges beyond just politics and economics. Health, society itself under pressure.
And then, quite differently, there's a philosophical bit. Life is a dream, belief in reincarnation.
Where experiences in one life, even something like mental illness, don't define your whole being after death.
It offers a very different lens on human experience, doesn't it? Challenges in life seen as part of a larger cycle.
A continuity beyond just this lifetime.
Lastly, a really cryptic comment. Mainstream media controlled by Romans, whom authorities fear.
Romans. Yeah, that's opaque. Could be metaphor for
Right.
powerful global groups. Specific media owners.
The source doesn't clarify.
No. Highly symbolic, suggests hidden influences shaping what we see and hear. Difficult to pin down, but points to a belief in unseen power structures in media.
Well, that was certainly a lot to cover, a really wide-ranging deep dive into these predictions.
It was.
So just to recap briefly for you. Potential shifts in Vatican leadership, some surprising twists predicted for the Polish election with maybe long-term effects, and then those quite concerning global conflict scenarios.
Plus economic changes, crypto, gold, philosophical ideas.
Yeah.
It really touched on a lot.
And it's crucial to remember, as we said at the start, these are interpretations, predictions from one individual. They need to be considered in that context.
Absolutely. But the way these different elements, political, economic, even spiritual, seem to connect in this narrative, it definitely gives you food for thought.
It does. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. If you consider these potential futures across all these different areas, how might you as an individual try to prepare or maybe just find some clarity amidst all this potential uncertainty, both personally and in how you see the world?
A lot to ponder there.
Definitely something to think about further on your own. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.